Go inside the Crimson Tide with your hosts Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. Tider Insider TV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports.
And good evening, everybody. Welcome into Tider Insider TV. Alongside Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com, I'm WVUA 23 Sports Director Gary Harris. And Rodney, you may not know the number, but you know it's been a lot. Alabama football has hosted ESPN's College Gameday 18 times. But Alabama men's basketball has never hosted the basketball version of Game Day. That will change. This coming Saturday, the Game Day crew will be in T-Town at Coleman Coliseum for the first time ever for Alabama basketball. The number 14 Crimson Tide will host number 4 Tennessee on Saturday night in Coleman Coliseum. Both teams right now are tied for the lead in the SEC championship race, so you can be pretty honest, I think, in saying that if Alabama is going to win this or tie for the SEC championship, they're going to have to beat Tennessee on Saturday night. Of course, they have a big game at Ole Miss tomorrow night as well. Both teams at 11-3. Tennessee's already beaten Alabama earlier this season in Knoxville. In fact, blew them out. Alabama's got 3 SEC losses. I'll say this, Rodney. They don't play around when they lose. At Tennessee, at Auburn, at Kentucky, all blowout losses. The one this past Saturday at Rupp was probably the worst of the bunch. 117-95. It's the most points Kentucky's ever scored against Alabama. And it was just as ugly as the score would indicate. Alabama scores 95 and still gets beat by 22. But Alabama's defensive effort, Nate Oates didn't sugarcoat it after the game. He says everybody knows we don't play any defense. So clearly, Rodney, he's challenging Alabama to come back tomorrow night with a good defensive effort at Ole Miss. And they'll need it because you don't want to be going into this Tennessee game and College Game Day and all the hoopla on a 2-game losing streak.
No, you don't. And I'll tell you this, too, Gary. Also, you talk about playing defense. I thought he made a great comment, too. He said, look, we can only improve so much defensively at this point. And I think that's right. Again, I think a lot of it's effort right now. And, could give Kentucky credit. I mean, obviously, extremely talented team. They were hot. So, sometimes when you face a team like that, it's hitting everything, it's tough. And
I kind of made a joke about it. But really, they all count one. And Alabama's 11-3. They still control their own destiny as far as winning a 3rd SEC championship under Nate Oates. And really, seriously, sometimes it hurts more, you're on the road and you lose one at the buzzer, you lose a 2 or 3 point game. Like I said, their 3 losses, they were no doubters. Yeah. Blown out at Tennessee, blown out at Auburn, blown out at Kentucky. The good news is, following the Tennessee loss, following the Auburn loss, they bounced back with wins, and that's what they'll be looking to do tomorrow night. Yeah,
that's what we talked about, especially after the Auburn game, the way they bounced back and played really, really well. And again, that's a sign of a team that can respond to adversity really well, and that's what it's going to take down the stretch. And obviously, it's another one of those circumstances, Gary, because these are big games. You got Ole Miss, you mentioned, and then obviously Tennessee. So be very important for them to bounce back strong in both those games.
And Saturday is going to be special. Nate Oates has built this program to the point where it's a national contender every year. And to have College Game Day in here, I think, signifies the fact that Alabama is a national player.
A lot of attention. I mean, when you've got the spotlight on you, how do you respond? I mean, like you said, Gary, this is a first. It's a great opportunity for Alabama basketball.
Indeed, it is. All right, now it's time for Coach Talk. And last Saturday, Duke star Kyle Filipowski was injured when Wake Forest fans stormed the court in Winston-Salem following the Demon Deacons win over the Blue Devils. Now, the incident has sparked concern and scrutiny again and has prompted a fresh round of questions about court storming. On Monday, Alabama's Director of Athletics, Greg Byrne, gave his thoughts on what can be done to keep this from becoming a bigger problem.
But when you have a sustained rush like what just happened the other day at Wake, you lose the game. That will get people to stop. The kids aren't going to be in the stands saying, "Oh, I don't want to do this because the school's going to get fined $200,000." They don't. That doesn't enter their mindset. But if they knew that the game that they just had been a part of and celebrated a great win that led to that, if they knew that they were going to lose that game immediately, that would stop it.
The Southeastern Conference changed its punishment structure in 2023, forcing schools that stormed the field or court to pay fines of $100,000 for the first violation, a second $250,000, and subsequent violations $500,000 each. The fines are now paid directly to the visiting school, too. But, Rodney, you heard Greg Burns say it, and Alabama deals with this like Duke and Kentucky do in basketball. Alabama deals with it in football. And we saw the situation a couple years ago at Kentucky. We've seen it a couple times at Auburn where it could have very easily gotten out of hand. Listen, I don't want to take away from the excitement and thrill of college football and college basketball, but you and I have been talking about this for a while. We've been fortunate so far. Jermaine Burton, got knocked into a girl at Tennessee, but these players, the losing team on the road, emotional to begin with. I do think there's going to come a time, whether it's a basketball court or a football field, but one of these players is going to lose his cool, and they're going to slug somebody.
Yeah.
And then it isn't going to be fun in games anymore. I do think that this has to be addressed, and there needs to be a system in place to keep this from happening in the future.
I think what Greg Burns said was perfect. I think it's a great recommendation. Forfeit the game, instantly. It counts as a loss. It really doesn't matter how badly you won the game, you lost. So that would probably certainly send a strong message to fans from storming the field, storming the court, whatever it might be.
All right, still to come on Tider Insider Television, Alabama football begins spring practice next week. But when we get into the 2024 season, the voice of Alabama football for 35 years will not be returning to the booth. Eli Gold is out as the voice of the Crimson Tide. We'll have that story. And we'll be getting to your phone calls, emails, and tweets as always. The phone number 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. There's the email address. You can email us, or you can also tweet at us if you'd like. Use the hashtag TITV, that email address, TITV@WVUA23.com. We'll be right back with the show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide, Tider Insider TV. And welcome back to Tider Insider Television, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. Visit Tuscaloosa alongside Rodney Orr. I'm Gary Harris. Well, Alabama football has certainly been no stranger to change this offseason. And the latest to leave the program, longtime play-by-play broadcaster, the voice of the Crimson Tide, Eli Gold, after 35 years calling Alabama football, 36 years as part of the Crimson Tide Sports Network, he is not going to be back in the booth in 2024. Of course, Eli missed the 2022 season while he battled cancer and thankfully came through that. Chris Stewart stepped in, and then this past season in 2023, Eli called the home games plus the Iron Bowl. Chris did all the away games plus the SEC Championship and College Football Playoff semifinal at the Rose Bowl. According to a press release from Crimson Tide Sports Network Vice President and General Manager Jim Carabin, Chris Stewart will fully take over the role as the football play-by-play broadcaster after doing men's basketball and baseball for about 20 years or so. Rodney, you and I love Eli. Hate to see him go at the same time. It's just part of everything. There's change, and Chris Stewart has been here a long time, as we mentioned. I think the transition will be pretty seamless from Eli to Chris.
Yeah, Eli was a real pro for all those years, did a fantastic job. He's synonymous with Alabama football. We know that. Chris has done a fantastic job, too, when he's had opportunities with basketball, obviously, and now with football. So he's a really talented guy and do a great job.
And Eli made it clear that he was not retiring and that the decision was not his, but he's not retired. He's already got a job as the Nashville Cats play-by-play broadcaster for the Arena League, and you can look to see Eli doing play-by-play for various events. As Rodney said, he's a real pro, and we wish Eli the best, and congratulations to Chris Stewart for moving into that role. All right, let's move on to spring football, because, Rodney, it's going to begin next Monday, March the 4th, and for the first time since 2006, when Mike Shula was the head coach, there's going to be somebody else calling the shots on the sideline. Coleman DeBoer will make his coaching debut next week as head coach of the Crimson Tide. 15 practices, including 8A. Listen, these are always important to building a football team, these 15 spring practices. But I think even more so with a new staff, a lot of new players, acclimation period. This is going to be critical, I think, to the summer and the fall in terms of success for Alabama, what they get done during spring practice.
No, yeah, it's really big because you've got a new offensive system they're implementing defensively as well, special teams, everything that they do to prepare for the fall. It starts right now. Actually, it started before now. They've had the fourth quarter program, which I hear has gone extremely well, the off-season winter workouts and those types of things. And preparation for spring practice, got some position battles, that kind of start up in the spring. So got a lot of new players, great time to get acclimated, but with the new coaching staff, Gary, you're right. This is when it really starts on the field.
Rodney, too, there was so much talk about players entering the portal, but Alabama kind of quietly, in addition to a great recruiting class and signing class, has solidified some positions through the portal as well.
Yes, they have. I mean, and I think they've got some more. I thought the pickup of Keon Sabb, obviously at safety, was really, really big. You know, they picked up some other guys. I think obviously the transfers from Washington were big. Was Parker Brailsford, the center, at a spot where you really needed some a player there. I mean, too, you got Jeremy Bernard, who's an established receiver coming in. I think he brings a lot to that wide receiver room. And Austin Mack, I mean, this guy, potentially, he's a young quarterback. He's a freshman. He's only 17 years old. Of course, he really redshirted last year at Washington, but he's a really talented kid as well. So all these guys and others that they brought in, yeah, I think they're going to lend a lot to this roster in the spring. But also, Gary, after spring, don't forget, there's another portal period that opens up, and Alabama's going to have some real opportunities then as well.
Also, you have Ryan Williams coming in this summer, too.
Yes.
And also the tight end Cuevas came in from Washington as well.
Yes, meant to mention him as well. I mean, he's a guy that I think can really make a strong contribution.
All right, spring starts next week, and there will be some media viewing periods, selected days of practice for the media to view practice. We haven't had a chance to do that in several years now, so we're looking forward to that. And there may be some other changes as far as access for media goes during spring ball. Spring will conclude with the annual 8A game on April 13th, and that will be, of course, open to the public, and they're looking to have a big crowd. All right, Rodney, let's talk some now about gymnastics and some news there that we hate to pass along. You know, we always talk about football injuries. You know how taxing it is on the body to be a gymnast. You can't, it seems, get through a season without injuries. And Makari Doggett, one of the senior leaders, actually a fifth-year senior that came back, she took advantage of the COVID year. She is great on the uneven bars, but a real leader to the team. She got hurt during the warm-ups last Friday night prior to the Georgia meet, the Power of Pink meet, and she goes down for the season. This is a big loss, but just like we talk about with football, you got to have depth. And somebody else is going to have to step up now.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how unfortunate, though, you know?
It really
is. I mean, you see it sometimes in other sports when players are injured before the game even starts. But obviously, this is a really bad situation with her in terms of the injury before the meet even starts.
Yeah, and that's how it can happen in gymnastics. I mean, there's so much strain on the body. They're so powerful. Landing even can cause an injury. And as Rodney just said, even during warm-ups, you can get hurt. Well, still to come on TITV, Crimson Tide softball is 16-0 on the season. Tide has been dominant. We'll talk about just how dominant. Plus, we'll be getting to your phone calls, emails, and tweets. Again, the phone number 205-348-9882. TITV at WVOA23.com is the email address. We want to hear from you, Tider Insider Nation. We'll take those phone calls and get to those emails next. Alabama softball absolutely dominated the Green and Gold Classic in Birmingham over the weekend, outscoring their opponents 45-5, and Alabama not playing around as far as getting a lot of games in. They're already 16-0. They will play Wednesday at Jacksonville State, and then they'll host the T-Mobile Classic in Tuscaloosa beginning on Thursday with Northern Iowa, South Alabama, and Arizona coming in. So some really good teams. Northern Iowa is Pat Murphy's alma mater. They're good. And you know Arizona is one of the top programs in the country. South Alabama is strong as well. Tomorrow's game against Jacksonville State will start at 5 p.m. and air on ESPN+. The T-Mobile Classic will air on the SEC Network Plus. And before we get to phone calls, Ronnie, just a quick thought on softball. Listen, Patrick Murphy's had some staff changeover with Allison Habits retiring, and at the same time, a lot of new players coming in. But this team so far has been absolutely dominant.
Yeah. I'm ready for the SEC schedule. I mean, I think that's really when we'll find out, where they are, as we always do, just like with baseball.
Yeah, Alabama rate number 10, looking to move up. Caleb Rowe coming in, former great player, former television broadcaster, has really done a great job with the outfielders and helping with the hitting as well. All right, let's get out on the phone lines and talk to Sammy up in Walker County. Hey, Sammy.
Thanks, Gary and Rodney. Great job, guys. In terminology, Alabama under Coach Saban ran a 3-4 defensive front, Gary and Rodney. Do you think, I had heard you mention this, Gary, do you think the defensive coordinator will run a 4-2-5 set? Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Sammy. Rodney and I discussed this on my radio show on Monday. Listen, terminology, and Alabama did run a basic 3 down lineman front, 4 linebackers or 2 rush ends, however you want to look at it. But a lot of times they were in nickel and dime. So a lot of these systems now are interchangeable anyway. Yeah, the base for Alabama will be a 4-2-5, but a lot of times that was the defense that Alabama ran anyway.
Yeah, they ran a lot of nickel. I mean, they mostly ran nickel in recent years. But also, Gary, when you look at maybe what Kane Womack could do, 4-2-5 as they call it, sometimes you're going to have 3 real down linemen. Then you'll have a guy that's an edge guy, maybe a Dallas Turner type or whoever it might be. This year, maybe a Quandarius Robinson. So it's really changed. It's versatile, Sammy. It certainly is really flexible. Nick Saban was really flexible. I expect Kane Womack's defense to be very flexible as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Quandarius Robinson. The guy's been around here, has played some, has been great on special teams, played quite a bit last year, but with Braswell and Turner leaving, this could be his opportunity. I understand, he has a hard time keeping weight on. Great athlete, but I understand he's beefed up a little bit. Watch out for him in 2024. All right, phone lines are open at 205-348-9882. Right now, let's get to our email question of the day. It's brought to you by KDM Service Corporation. When it comes to heating and air conditioning, KDM Service Corporation serves your family like our family. Who'll be the starting running back? That's from Jeremy in Moundville. Rodney, it's a great question. Maybe Jam Miller might be the guy that's the favorite, but obviously Justice Haynes, and others will be competing hard as well.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not really sure it matters, Jeremy, who starts, because I think you're going to have obviously a rotation, some really quality backs. You talk about Jam Miller, but also Justice Haynes, who looked fantastic, of course, in the game against Michigan in the Rose Bowl. Richard Young was a 5-star true freshman last year. He got redshirted. He showed some flash when he got opportunities. Obviously, you got Daniel Hill in. He's an early enrollee from Meridian. You've got Kevin Riley from right here in Tuscaloosa. Alabama didn't have to go very far to get their running backs in this class. But those guys are really talented. But, yeah, I mean, again, I think there's going to be a rotation, so it might not really matter who gets the first snap.
It's a good group, though. You mentioned that. It's a really strong group. All right, let's get to another email question. This is from Tommy in Tuscaloosa. How much does Alabama men's basketball miss with Trell Reitzel Jr.? Tommy, I think the answer is a lot, although, Nate Oates made it clear after the Kentucky game, as good as Reitzel is, he probably wouldn't have made a difference in that game. But he's probably been the most consistent three-point shooter. Veteran guy that's, transferred in, has played a lot of basketball, really found his niche. But you know what? You can't play around with those head injuries, Rodney. And Oates has made it clear they won't play him until he's 100% cleared. We don't know if he'll be able to go tomorrow night at Ole Miss or not. Could be a decision that's made, right before the game. But Alabama does miss him.
Yeah, they do. I mean, I know on TighterInsider.com, certainly the fans have been really, upset that he hasn't been able to play because they feel like he would have made a big difference. And I'm with you, Gary. I mean, he's got to get healthy first. First and foremost, get him healthy because you're really going to need him down the stretch.
All right, still to come on Tighter Insider Television, Alabama baseball playing UAB tonight over at Regions Field. We'll have an update on the Tide, plus they dominated Valpo over the weekend. And phone lines are open. If you want to get through, now's your time. 205-348-9882 is the number. Go ahead and give us a call. Also, there's the email address on the screen. We'll be back with more phone calls and emails right here on TITV. Alabama baseball took care of business over the weekend with another sweep, taking care of Valparaiso. Alabama is 8-0 overall, and they have been playing great. Their Sunday win was 11-1. It was a 7-inning game. They had a couple of run rule games. T.J. McCants and Evan Slight strong with the bat in that game. Really, the team has been, as I said, just dominant. Gage Miller, Will Hodo chipping in offensively. The pitching staff has been good, both from the starting rotation and the relief aspect from the bullpen. So Alabama's looked good. But tonight they're playing away from home for the first time. They're taking on UAB over at Regions Field in Birmingham. And right now, it's UAB 4-0 in the third. Alabama with an error that allowed a couple of runs to score. So the Tide is down 4 runs. We'll see if they can come back over there at beautiful Regions Field. Highlights for you coming up tonight on WVOA 23 News at 10. Welcome back in to TITV with Rodney Orr. I'm Gary Harris. Phone lines, I'm told, are open. This is unbelievable. Usually not this open. 205-348-9882. In the meantime, we've got an email to get to, and let's take a look at our next email, Rod. It's from Curtis in Tuscaloosa. Will Coach DeBoer or Coach Sheridan call the plays this season? Coach DeBoer's offense, but I understand, Rodney, that the offensive coordinator calls the plays. In this case, it's Nick Sheridan. Is that your expectation?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, he talks about allowing his coaches to coach, and Ryan Grubb obviously called most of the plays. I suspect that at Washington, I would expect Nick Sheridan to call most of the plays here. Could he have some input, Coach DeBoer, in game time situations? Sure, he could. But I expect Nick Sheridan to call the plays.
All right, that's an email from here in Tuscaloosa. Let's get to an email from Lori in Birmingham. Could Grant Nelson, Alabama basketball player, return next season? I'm not sure. If he came in during the COVID year, maybe so, but he transferred in after 3 years playing at North Dakota State. And I think, first of all, he came in, Rodney, with the idea of going up in competition, playing in the SEC, playing for Alabama, and is planning on going into the NBA draft regardless. I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know if he's got another year that he could take or not, but Rodney, regardless, I think he's going to be gone after this season.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that was the exact expectation he had coming here to spend a year. That's what we think.
And he's helped himself. He has his stats aren't as good as they were at North Dakota State, but he's playing a higher level of competition. But, they've asked him to play the 5 position some. He's played the 4. He's played the 3. I think he's really helped himself, and I think he's going to make it in professional basketball, certainly, possibly even in the NBA. All right, thanks for those phone calls and emails. Still to come, track and field captured 4 medals at the SEC Championships. We've got that story coming up next. We'll be back on a beautiful night in Tuscaloosa right after this. Alabama track and field captured 4 medals in the final day of the 2024 SEC Indoor Track and Field Championships. Chris Robinson won bronze in the men's 400 meters. Doris Lemengol and Hilda O'Malley collected silver and bronze in the women's 3,000 meters. Victor Kiprop, who's been outstanding, closed out the Tide, placing 3rd in the men's 3,000 meter run. The women finished in the conference meet in 9th place, and the men finished 10th. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of TITV, presented by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. Don't forget, if you missed any of the show, we'll have a replay tonight at 10:30, or you can find it anytime at WVOA23.com. We're going to leave you with some Twitter video of Alabama celebrating game day coming to Tuscaloosa on Saturday. For Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a good night.